knocking on doors here in Etobicoke Lakeshore, I'm hearing people say that Andrea is the only leader who cares enough to talk to us and understand the realities of what's happening in our community. She's the only one that's competent enough to take us into this next phase of life, and she's the only one who will fix what the Liberals and Conservatives broke and help university students become healthy and happier. Please join me in welcoming our next Premier of Ontario, Andrea Horwath.
Thanks so much, Farine, and I'm really, really happy to be here with you, as well as our guests, to talk about something that is really important right now in our province, and that is the situation that people are facing without having the mental health supports that they need at a time that's been pretty tough these last couple of years. So, first of all, young people particularly have seen a really tough time. And we've seen the disruption that's happened in post-secondary. We know that the mental health supports aren't there for people on campus or off campus. And so I was hoping, before we get into my formal kind of remarks, to get a little bit of a conversation going around what you've been experiencing and how you're feeling in terms of access to mental health services when you need them the most. So I'm looking to see who might be interested in starting first.
I am very happy to go first.
Okay, great.
My name is Jamie. I've been dealing with mental illness since I was 9 years old and was treated at Sick Kids. And I graduated university pretty recently from U of T. I've actually found, thank you. I found that since graduating, actually, at U of T, I did get some counseling through the university. It wasn't adequate, but it was something. And then since graduating, it's been even worse, where I've waited for a year for a program that was really short term, and that was actually it was really, really intense, but only for 1 month, where I had, I had a social worker, a psychiatrist, a counselor, but then afterwards, there was no exit strategy, there was no follow-up support. I never saw any of those people again, and it was actually quite traumatizing. And then I waited for another 1.5 years with absolutely no support, and I was in a very, very vulnerable place. And then the same thing happened again with the next program. So it's left me pretty jaded, and there's pretty much no option for just one-on-one continuous support in this province. It's all short-term, 8 sessions, usually group therapy. And where I'm at right now is that actually my family doctor said she referred me to a program or to a counselor in the fall, and I followed up with her, and she never did. So I thought I was on the wait list the whole time. I wasn't.
Oh my goodness.
And now I'm waiting for an appointment in August. So it's very, and it's and there's no guarantee that anything will even come of that. And it will probably be a short-term group therapy program again. So that's really all there is. And then the other thing I was supposed to do.
This one too?
Yeah. The other thing I was supposed to do basically got pushed forward 2 years. So that having that experience happen over and over again is in itself a huge cause of mental health distress.
Well, I was going to say, it just adds to your anxiety levels and your, your stability. If you're getting some help, and then there's long stretches in between, and you don't know when the next bit of support is coming, or how to find what you need in terms of supports, that's got to make things worse and not better. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing with us. Did you want to say something next?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Della, and I'm currently doing a master's in counseling psychology. So I've sort of seen the mental health field in Ontario from both a counselor side and from a client side. And really what it comes down to is that it really just isn't enough. I've always been really passionate about working with post-secondary students. And right now, the support that we have through universities is not thorough enough to be able to support the needs that we have. So the example that Jamie gave, which was a great example, is the fact that a lot of the help that we get is very short term. It's often very group based, because it's easier to get 10 people in a room than it is to get one person with one counselor.
Because the resources aren't there, right?
Exactly,
the resources aren't there for the one-on-one help.
Yeah, and I have friends who are graduating whose doctors through schools are refusing to refer them into the community because they say wait lists are too long to even put people on them at this point. And so I have people who are leaving university and are going to lose all of their supports that they've had through university, which really isn't enough in the first place.
Yeah, well, thanks, Della, for sharing that. And you can see how really we lack a mental health system, period, in this province. There really isn't a system. You know, depending on if you have enough money or if you happen to have services in your community, that will determine whether you get the help and supports and therapies that you need. And that shouldn't be the way things are happening. That shouldn't be the experience of people in Ontario, or particularly young people who have a lot of stresses facing them in the context of their education and life, which is getting so much harder for folks right now, especially coming through COVID and everything else. Chris, did you want to share a little bit as well?
Yes. So I'm right now actually getting back into college after I was studying at Humber for a few years. They did give me some mental health support in that school, but it was actually just from students who were learning at the school, so it was not the strongest of mental health support. Now I'm going to Seneca to study illustration. I kind of had to claw my way back through there because the whole school system kind of just fell apart for us. Yeah. Especially with building a portfolio after like getting out of high school was really difficult to do on my own. So I went through a private school, which did not give me mental health support, but they did give me support in the arts field. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm currently in between therapists. So I just finished, because I'm over 18, they dropped me from my child therapist. So now I'm finding an adult therapist. I've had one session with her, but to try to get a session, they're pretty steep price. My dad is a retired firefighter, but he just turned 65. So all of his benefits have just gone once you hit 65, which covered a lot of my mental health support and my physical therapy for my sports situations. It's a very, very steep price tag right now, and instead of now seeing a therapist once every week to once every 2 weeks, now I'm seeing them once every month, once every 3 months. And it feels like the gaps are getting further and further and further apart because it's very difficult for me and my family to get those resources that I need.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing, Chris. And it's true. The thing that happens when this person turns 65, benefits are gone, and that impacts the person that's retiring, but it impacts the whole family. And so when it comes to mental health services, there's the dual issue around finding services in the first place, but then being able to afford it out of pocket is a real barrier for people to get what they need to stay well and to get the frequency of care that they need to continue to get stronger and stronger as time goes on. So I think that's both what you were identifying and what Jamie was identifying too in many ways. And I want to thank both of you as well as Della for having this conversation, and I think and Fareen as well. Thank you, Fareen, so much. It's great to be here in Etobicoke Lakeshore and having this great conversation in Mimico Square, which is beautiful. But I'm here to say to Ontarians, we can do so much better for people. We can get together, come together, and make sure that mental health services are provided for everybody who needs them, so that you can get the mental health services that you need with your health card, with your OHIP card, as opposed to your credit card. And as has been described by these wonderful young people, there are lots of challenges facing folks, particularly young people in post-secondary. We saw how disruptive COVID-19 has been to your education. We know that whether it's community college, whether it's university, whether it's trade school, there's been a lot of pressure on young people, and the consistency of not only classes and courses, but supports that you need in school to succeed during this disruptive time have been really, really difficult to get. And so I'm happy to say that our plan would fix that. Together, Ontarians can come together in this election and make sure that people can get the mental health services that they need, as I said, with their OHIP card and not a credit card. we know that is possible. We know that we can provide more services, more trained professionals to be able to make sure people have access to mental health care in their communities, in their post-secondary institutions, and we can also make sure that we're providing, for example, a province-wide standard for counseling that is trauma-informed for sexual violence on campus. That is another piece that we need to have, a province-wide standard so that those things can be addressed as well. But, you know, in Ontario, things have gotten worse under Doug Ford, not better. Conservative cuts always hurt people. They always hurt people who need the kinds of supports that we know we can provide. Doug Ford's cut $2 billion from mental health care in our province, which is really selling these young people short and negatively impacting in huge ways their futures. So we need to do better. We need to come together. We need to make sure that we can put in place a plan for mental health care that helps people to get the services that they need and be able to know that that's available without having to dig into your wallet or scrape together, you know, as much as you possibly can, putting off your sessions far into the future until you save up enough to be able to go to therapy. That is not effective for people to deal with their mental health issues and concerns. So as I said, I'm really glad to be here with Fareen Aleem here in this riding to let people know that together we can fix it. We can fix the mental health crisis that people are facing in Ontario. We can do that by coming together and voting for the NDP on June 2nd to bring mental health care to the people of this province through their OHIP card and making sure they have the services that they need. And you can go and vote right now. If you want mental health care to be addressed in this province, if you want it available, if you want it to be provided through your OHIP card, go out and vote NDP right now. The polls are open, the advance polls, until the 28th of May, and I know that together we can fix the mental health care system and give people the supports that they need. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to take some questions now. Thanks again, all of you, for being here, for telling your stories, for being the voice for other people. I just want to acknowledge that because it's hard to tell your stories, right? It takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of guts, but your voices really are amplifying the voices of other people too. And so I have deep gratitude for all of you for doing that, for sharing your stories and being here to be the voice not only for yourselves, but for so many others as well. So thanks very much. Okay, so we'll go to some questions.
So we'll move to on-site questions first. First question comes from Jack Cowan from QP Briefing.
Hi, Ms. Horwath.
Give me a second, Jack. I don't need this. Nope. Thank you, Laura. Okay, Jack, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. You sound better.
I'm much better. Thank you.
So the Liberals sent out a release saying that the NDP mental health care plan would only cover like 20 minutes of therapy based on the costing. The full plan, I know, promises up to 12 OHIP covered therapy sessions. So what's the difference with the math there? What are they not understanding?
Well, Mr. Del Duca can send out whatever trash he wants. You know, he's going to try to do that. That's his kind of campaigning, not mine. What I'm here to do is give people hope that we can fix the things that matter most. Let's face it, for 15 years, mental health services got worse and worse under the Liberals. And in that time, which is really the shame of it all, in that time, Mr. Del Duca and Ms. Wynne and Mr. McGuinty's Liberals actually did a huge body of work for 2 years, doing research with an all-party committee about the problem that we have in Ontario in terms of providing access to mental health services. And they had a beautiful report that was generated by the input of the MPPs on the committee and so many people in community, everyday people as well as experts. They came up with a massive set of recommendations, and the Liberals did not a single thing. And that's the big difference between the NDP and the Liberals. And Mr. Del Duca can shoot whatever he wants across the bow, but at the end of the day, they know that they had the chance and they didn't fix the mental health care system, even though they created a bit of a roadmap. So shame on them for that. But I just want to say, it's not a matter of 12 sessions and then that's it. It's a matter of making sure that every ounce of help, every ounce of therapy, every ounce of counseling that a person needs is going to be provided depending on that person's needs. So 6 sessions, 12 sessions, referrals to psychiatrists, referrals to psychologists. We don't prejudge where someone's mental health journey and their mental health support journey is going to end up. We provide them with what they need through their OHIP card.
Okay, and just to clarify, if I have workplace benefits that cover psychotherapy, whatever other mental health, will I be able to get a top-up under the NDP plan? Because I know a lot of people who have like $300 in therapy covered by their workplace, but
which doesn't get you very far, and that's why we're going to make sure that mental health services are provided through your OHIP card. And so that it's a good question, because what that does, both with our mental health plan and our pharmacare plan, is it provides some ability for those workplace-based plans to no longer have to cover those things off, which will be a savings for both employee and employers in terms of contributions to those plans, because they won't be needed anymore. And so then that leaves, I guess, space, if you will, for employers to perhaps add other kinds of benefits into those workplace plans, or it provides a relief in the pocketbook of both the contributor on the employee side as well as the employer contribution. So absolutely, this will be covered by OHIP and not by employer plans any longer.
Next question comes from John Chidley-Hill from the Canadian Press.
Hey, John.
Good morning. I had a couple of questions about your proposals for autism and helping people with autism. My first question is, you're proposing some changes to the current program in order to clear the wait list. Do you have an idea of how long it would take to do that?
What I can say about autism, first and foremost, is that it is despicable. What's been happening to children and their families, children with autism and their families, for a long time now. The families of children with autism and the advocate groups that have been working on their behalf, mostly made up of parents of children with autism, have fought Liberal governments for years and have fought the Conservative government for years. Doug Ford promised those families that he was going to fix the autism scenario, the treatment opportunities for kids, and he made it worse. He doubled the wait list. So what we are saying to these families is, we are going to design a program with you that meets the needs of your children, that doesn't have artificial age caps on it, that doesn't have artificial standards that are having to be met. Children should be getting the services that they need based on their needs. So a needs-based program without age caps that actually provides the services that families need. Families are going bankrupt trying to find the money to get services. And because Doug Ford has destabilized the system so much, those services can hardly even be accessed, because so many people have left the field with the system that's really been torn apart by the Conservatives. So we're going to fix all of that, and it can't be a switch in terms of a light switch, but we will be absolutely from day one doing everything we can to be making sure that kids get the kinds of therapies that they need.
But do you have a sense of how long it will take to clear the wait list that has built up?
Well, again, what we want to do is make sure that we are clearing that wait list as quickly as possible. And what we have to do in order to do that is show that we are prepared to rebuild a system that will help our kids get the therapies that they need. So all of those people that left the field, that aren't providing ABA, that aren't providing IBI, all those folks are going to be invited back to start providing those therapies, because they know there's going to be a government that's prepared to fund the services. And so that's what's going to clear the wait list, building the system up again. And so we are not going to put artificial caps on age and or on therapy.
Okay, when your platform was released, the party said you would make changes to the autism program within the current $600 million budget, but your platform costing allocates extra money over 3 years. Why is that?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to provide children with autism the services that they need to progress. And what we've seen, and it's really just inhumane. We've seen kids regress. We've seen the gains that have been made by children in Ontario be lost because of what the Conservatives have done to the autism program. And so making sure that we are indicating to families and to our kids that we will be there for them and we will not go backwards is extremely important to me. Thank you.
Next question comes from Natasha McDonald-Dupuis from Radio Canada.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
The PCs are announcing this morning a 7th endorsement from a labor union. I believe it's the Union of Refrigeration Workers. What do you make of that? I'm guessing you've had time to reflect on why that is, why so many labor unions are turning to the PCs. What's your explanation?
Oh, well, on the contrary, the New Democrats have a number of union organizations that continue to support us, and I can say proudly that I know whose side I'm on, and I'm always on the side of working people, and I always have been. And when you look at whether it's the Ontario Federation of Labour, whether it is CUPE, whether it is OPSU, whether it is IAM, whether it is transit workers, whether it is steel workers. The bottom line is working people know that we're not fair weather friends, that the NDP sticks with working people all the time, and we're proud of that. I could also say that we know that Doug Ford is not a consistent friend of working people. And of course, Conservatives aren't people that look out for everyday Ontarians. We saw this particular premier take $6,000 out of the pockets of minimum wage workers. We saw this Doug Ford turn his back on working people and refuse to provide the paid sick days they needed to help get them through the pandemic. We've seen the Conservatives consistently refuse to get rid of their low-wage policy, Bill 124, that is chasing nurses and other frontline healthcare workers out of the healthcare system in Ontario. And that low-wage policy is now spreading through the private sector, spreading through Doug Ford's developer buddies and builder buddies, which is why there are so many of these construction unions that have been on strike. Doug Ford always takes care of the big fish. He always takes care of the top of the food chain. And he thinks that, maybe some crumbs can trickle down to the rest of us. I disagree. I'm gonna make sure that those big fish, that the folks at the top of the food chain are actually paying their fair share, so that we can make sure that everyday working people do not have to pay any more taxes, that middle class and our middle income and low income families will have a complete freeze on their taxes, while those big buddies of Doug Ford's, the big corporations that really did have windfall profits during this pandemic, those dudes are going to have to pay a little bit more so that we can have mental health care for our young people, so that we can make sure folks can go to a dentist without having to wait 3 years and save up enough money to get what was initially an abscess and now is a root canal to get that fixed. These are the kinds of things that New Democrats stand for and stand with. We'll scrap Bill 124. We'll bring a $20 minimum wage to Ontario. We'll will make sure that people can afford everyday life here, including the cost of housing, the cost of auto insurance, the cost of gasoline. That's what everyday working people need right now. That's what they tell me that they're worried about, and I'm guaranteeing them that come June 2nd, a vote for the NDP is going to make sure you will have all of these things to help life get better and to give you hope for the future.
Do you have a follow-up, Natasha?
Yeah. Most of the polls are showing that the Liberals seem to be winning the race to second place. Are you going to do anything? Is there going to be a pivot in your campaign right now? Anything you're going to be doing differently to reverse that?
I think it's really clear that what all of the polls are saying is that at least 6 out of 10 Ontarians don't want to see Doug Ford get another term in office. Why? Because everybody knows that regardless of what they say during a campaign, Conservative cuts are going to hurt. Conservative cuts are going to hurt these young people. Conservative cuts are going to hurt Ontarians, and we just can't afford any more Conservative cuts. But we also know that the Liberals had 15 years to do what we are talking about today, to do the things that would actually help people, and they didn't. And so as we get to these next couple of days until we get to June 2nd, this is the conversation I'm having with Ontarians. We can't rely on the Liberals to fix the things that they broke. Let's face it, they froze the minimum wage for years and years and years on end as people had a harder and harder time making ends meet. The Liberals didn't care. They brought us hallway medicine. The reason our hospitals are in such a mess is because the Liberals froze and cut hospitals. They fired nurses. We can't go back to that. They sold off Hydro One and drove up our electricity prices. There's a reason why they were kicked to the curb in the last election. There's a reason why they didn't even make party status and why Stephen Del Duca lost his seat. What I can say to Ontarians is you don't have to go back to that. You don't have to go back to the disappointing Liberals that made life harder, nor do you have to go back to the Conservatives whose cuts will hurt even more. It's really an election at which there's a lot at stake, and I can tell the people of this province that the NDP is the party that will actually get to work, roll up our sleeves, and get to work every day on the things that matter most to you. I know who I'm in it for. I've always been in it for everyday working people, and I want to let you know that we can fix the things that are broken. We absolutely can do that. We can't rely on the folks that broke it or the folks we know are not going to fix it. You can rely on the NDP.
Next question comes from Alan Hale from Queen's Park Today.
Hi, Andrea.
Hey, Alan.
Good to see you back on the campaign trail.
It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
I'm just wondering about your priorities for the time that you have left to go out and shore up support in different ridings. It sounds like your itinerary today is taking to York Centre and Bay of Quinte, and these are places that I don't think the NDP have ever won or are particularly close to winning. What is your priority here for places you want to go and visit and try to help promote your candidates? Are you going to help the people who are already elected to make sure they maintain their seats, or are you looking for new seats to pick up? How are you deciding where you're going to spend your time?
Well, Alan, I would just point you to the last election campaign when the NDP came first or second in 100 out of 124 ridings to give you a sense of where we're headed. You'll know that the vast majority of ridings that we've been in so far have been ridings that have been represented, that are represented by the Conservatives or were in the last election. So we're going to keep talking to folks in ridings like the one we're in today, like the other ones that we're going to be in today, because people need to know that there is hope, that we just don't have to keep going back and forth between Liberals and Conservatives while life keeps getting harder and harder. I mean, life was tough when the Liberals were defeated last time around, but in the last 4 years, it's become even harder. Life has become even tougher, and Doug Ford has no plan whatsoever to make life easier for everyday folks. Yep, he's going to build huge highways. to big mansions that nobody can afford while he destroys farmland and cuts into the greenbelt, by the way, which is, after we saw what happened on the weekend, surely Doug Ford should finally get it, that the climate change crisis is upon us and his plans are reckless and irresponsible. But our plans are not. Our plans are thoughtful, and they center everything that we do in making life easier for folks, in giving them a break in the pocketbook. And that's the case whether we're here in Etobicoke Lakeshore, or whether we're in the Bay of Quinte, or whether we're in Peterborough. And wherever we're going in the next number of days, our message remains the same. You can have a premier that works for you. You can have a premier that's always on your side. That's what the people of Ontario deserve. They deserve no less, and that's what I'm offering.
But you're not going to spend more time shoring up places that you want to maintain seats. Like, you put a lot of effort into Brampton this time, and you have lots of first-time MPPs there that need to maintain their seats. Would that be a better use of your time than going down to Bay of Quinte, where the candidate lost by like 17 points last time?
Well, again, I think this election is different than the last election. I think Doug Ford has shown over 4 years who he's in it for. He's in it for the folks at the top of the food chain, no matter what he wants to try to tell people right now. He's not on the side of working people. And so whether those working people are in the Bay of Quinte or whether they're here in Etobicoke Lakeshore, people need some hope for the future, and that's what New Democrats offer. And, you know, there's no doubt we have fantastic MPPs in Brampton, and I am confident that they are all going to get their seats back. But there are also other ridings in Brampton that deserve hardworking New Democrats to fight for them each and every day at Queen's Park, and that's why we go to Brampton, so that those other ridings know that they can have that stellar type of representation that is provided currently by people like Sarah Singh and people like Gurrathan Singh, and we know that's exactly what they deserve, and we are letting them know. And by me being there, I'm showing them that although Brampton has been ignored and treated despicably, really, by Conservatives and Liberals in the past. It's why we still don't have access to health care in the way that we should in Brampton. One of the fastest growing communities continues to only have one full-service hospital. It's a disgrace. Liberals promised year after year, election after election, and never fixed the health care problems in Brampton. And of course, 4 years of the Conservatives, we've seen Doug Ford break his promise already about the hospitals in Brampton. New Democrats will bring not only the change to Peel Memorial to be a full-service hospital, 24/7 emergency ward, as well as acute care beds that are necessary, but a third hospital and a regional cancer center. Bramptonians deserve nothing less, and that's one of the reasons I'm there, to show the people of Brampton that they can have hope, that they can finally elect a government that's going to fix what's been broken in healthcare in Brampton for a long time. As I've said many times, Brampton was ground zero for the hallway medicine crisis because the Liberals allowed it to be that way, and Doug Ford hasn't fixed it.
Next question comes from Randy Toms from 93.1 The Border.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Andrea. A lot of your platforms within healthcare center around people, adding more people. Where are the people coming from, especially in Northern Ontario, where I always bring this up? We're experiencing a huge labor shortage. Even the McDonald's can't get people. So if we can't get people in McDonald's, how are you going to get these nurses, doctors, psychiatrists that we need for these services in Northern Ontario?
It's a great question, and there's a number of pieces that we need to put in place to address that problem. You know that we are going to be increasing the number of spaces at the university, at the School of Medicine, but we are also going to be recruiting 300 new healthcare professionals, doctors, and specialists to Northern Ontario. And part of the plan is to make sure that not only do we get those folks there, but that we make sure that those communities in Northern Ontario can provide the quality of amenities and the quality of life that healthcare professionals are looking for. So we won't be closing more schools in Northern Ontario, for example. We will be bringing better transit to northern communities, particularly the transit systems like the Northlander and others. We will be making sure that when small municipalities in Northern Ontario identify that they need some support from their provincial government to make sure that the arena isn't falling over or that the bridges are being repaired, that we're paying attention to their needs. When I got the call from the Mayor of Red Lake a while back, letting me know that the emergency ward was literally going to be closed for a weekend because there were no physicians available to be able to provide service to that emergency ward, that should not be happening in the province of Ontario. It should not be happening. So the difference between myself and the other parties is